What's up, everyone? Zach Walker, your Texas local lender here today. We are going to talk about the number one most asked question from my time as a real estate agent, and that is what happens if I back out of a contract? And at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you a story about how I got sued for $8 million in this very situation. You don't want to miss it. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what happens if I back out of a real estate contract. Because a lot of people go into this and they don't have a great understanding of the legal system, the contract law. How does it work? What happens if I get into a house, get into a contract, I commit to buy, and then I change my mind? And so let's start with, what does it mean to get under contract? That is a law-abiding promissory note of sorts that you're entering into a contract with a willing seller as a willing buyer, and you're agreeing to purchase the home for X amount of money in a certain period of time. And assuming all things go well, you obviously want to execute that contract, perform on that contract. Those are words you're going to hear me use: performing, non-performing, and executing on the contract, right? Because we want to buy a house. You're not going to enter into a contract that you don't want to, on a house you don't want to buy. That just doesn't make any sense. But what if there's a foundation problem? What if I lose my job? What if you fill in the blank, right? What if something happens and I'm unable to perform on that contract? So let's go through a few things. One, if your real estate agent is smart, and I hope that they are, they're going to build in some contingencies for you, right? Like, there are certain things. A contract is not one-sided. It's not just, oh, the buyer has to buy the house no matter what. It has some rules and stipulations for the seller as well. They have some obligations and some metrics they have to perform on, right? Like, the house has to appraise most of the time. Now, there are appraisal waivers that you could certainly put into the contract, but that's your choice. The house has to be inspected and be found to have no major defects, or the seller has to agree to fix certain major defects. Again, all of these are negotiable, but any one of these would give you cause to terminate the contract if the contract is written correctly. So let's say you get a contract on a house and you put a contract in at $550,000, and then all of a sudden the house appraises at $475,000. You say, well, I don't want a house for 75 grand more than what the appraiser says it's worth. Then the seller says, well, I'm not changing the price. I think it's worth, $550 because Uncle Joe's Aunt Sally's cousin Bob said so. Well, Uncle Joe's Aunt's cousin Sally Bob is wrong, and it's not. So what are you going to do? Well, that's your choice. Now you have the opportunity to exit the contract. You can terminate, move on, go find another house, or you can choose to waive the appraisal. This is going to allow you to buy the house. Now, the loan is only going to come in at $475. So you're going to have to write a check, cash money, straight cash, homie, to the seller for 75 grand. And you're now stuck upside down in a home that you'll probably never be able to sell. So not the best plan necessarily. Now, in certain markets, it's absolutely necessary. And that's just the state of the market. So you have no choice there. Let's look at the other side of that. Let's look at the inspection side, right? So you get a house under contract and, Joe Bob, the inspector, comes in and there's termites. Uh-oh. Well, do they have a termite bond? If so, then you have the right as the buyer to say, remedy the problem. There is a problem with the house that wasn't in the contract. It was outside of the contract. So now you can either terminate the contract or you can negotiate a lower price. You can negotiate the repairs. You can negotiate whatever the case. Now, in the case of termites, typically homes have termite bonds from local pest companies, and those pest companies will come out and execute a remedy because it's their fault you got termites in the first place. If you didn't have a termite bond or termite prevention, then it's going to be on the seller to remedy the problem and find a solution, fix it to your liking, and then you can continue to execute the contract. But at that time, you can turn around and terminate. So let's look at the question of, what if I lose my job? What if I lose my job? Can I back out? So that's a little bit trickier, right? Because it's on the seller's or on the buyer's side rather. And so what happens if I lose my job? Well, the contract very clearly states that it is contingent upon approved financing, right? Like you've got to have a lender willing to do the deal for them to hold you to the contract. And if you lose your job, your lender is not going to continue forward in issuing a loan on the property if you have no ability to repay. So you would then exit the contract or terminate the contract or not perform on the contract based on the contractual right to cancel or terminate if you don't have a lender willing to lend, right? So this covers a lot of different situations. My question to you would be, if you ask me, you say, hey, what if I want to back out of a contract? What if I want to back out of buying a house? My question to you would be, for what reason? If it's just because you walk in, you fall in love with a house, and then you emotionally sign a contract that's $20 or $30,000 overpriced, and now you have buyer's remorse and you feel bad and you want to terminate the contract, too bad. That's your real estate agent's fault. They've got a fiduciary responsibility to protect your investment and make sure that you are understanding exactly what you're doing. If my client, when I had my real estate firm, if my client wanted to write an over asking offer, I made them sign a document that said, I acknowledge that I'm paying over asking price, and my agent has advised me this may not be a great idea. Now, did that paper have any real value? None whatsoever. Absolutely none. But what it did was it made my client stop, and they had to look at this paper and say, you know what? I'm paying over asking price on a house. Why? Why am I paying this much for this house? Is it just because it has a wonderful kitchen or it's got the heated floors that I like or whatever? Or is the market telling me that this is what I have to do? Sometimes you have to pay over asking price. That's okay. But I just wanted my clients to know that what they were doing may be foolish, and then we would evaluate that. But they had to sign that paper every single time. And I can't tell you how many times someone would have been like, yeah, you know what? Just by looking at this stupid paper that I could have literally written on a napkin because it had no contractual value whatsoever. But that little piece of paper stopped them, and they said, yeah, I don't know about that. Coming back to the question of, can I back out of a house? Not just because you want to. You've got to have cause. There has to be cause for a termination. In the football world, all the time, you hear about these coaches with these big buyouts. And like Brian Harsin at Auburn, they were trying to fire him for cause, meaning fire him for a reason, thus negating his buyout. So you must have cause to back out of a real estate deal. So think about that. And when you write up the contract, you have to think, hey, what are the causes? What are the things that would cause me? That's how I always thought about it. What would cause me to want to back out? And as a real estate agent, I had to think, what would cause me to advise my client not to purchase this house? Most of the time, it was financial, it was structural, it was health and safety. It was those things, right? It was never, oh, we just made a bad offer and now we want to change our mind. So I told you I was going to tell you a story. I was once upon a time in a land far away as a young real estate agent. I stuck a sign on a big piece of property, 50 plus acres, that a friend's parent had in their family for years and years and years. And I really was just marketing the property to market myself and get my name out there and so on and so forth. And so I stuck my big sign in this piece of property, and over the next 4 to 5 months, things moved a little bit, but not really. But again, it was accomplishing the goal. My phone number and my name were out there. And I had my conversation with the clients. Hey, this is free. This is all good, right? Everything's good. Yeah, everything's good. Great. So we get it under contract with one of the largest developers in town. This developer is going to come in and build a neighborhood on it. And so he's paying good money for it. We negotiate a price. Great. We are a week away from closing, and I get a call. Hey, man. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-oh. So he did his title work. And when he did his title work, he found out there was a lien on the property. There was a contract that was executed years beforehand by another developer. This other developer had put a contract with no termination date, and he had fleeced my clients into a never-ending contract, which in the state of Alabama is illegal, right? So it was a non-valid, non-binding contract at that point. But that point could be argued in court theoretically. And so this original contract, the man that held it filed with the court system, stopped the sale of the property momentarily. And now I've got clients who have 2 contracts on a property. I want to be very clear. I had no idea the original contract existed. I looked it up myself. I mean, we did our due diligence. They didn't tell me anything. They didn't even remember it. It had been years ago. These were elderly folks that had a legacy piece of property that they were trying to sell at the end of life to leave a legacy for their grandkids and great grandkids. Now I've got a client stuck in the middle with 2 contracts. You cannot possibly perform on 2 contracts. You're going to perform on one, non-perform on the other, which means you're going to get sued by somebody. Right? You're going to get sued by somebody. So here it came. We closed on the property with the second contract because our attorney's opinion was that the first contract was not legally valid. It had no end date. Well, unfortunately, contract number 1 had more money than any of the rest of us did and tied it up in court for a long, long time. And I ended up getting dragged into this lawsuit as someone being sued as a party to fraud. Right? Which is absurd. It's absurd. I did nothing but stick a sign on a property and help my elderly clients sell their legacy real estate. The long story short is this: contracts can bite you in the butt if you're not careful. Never sign a contract without getting someone else's opinion on it. Never sign a contract you haven't read the whole thing. See, if they had an attorney evaluate the first contract before they signed it, they would have known not to sign it because it had no termination date, right? And at some point, after years, if you've not performed on a contract, the contract is no longer valid. But in this case, they didn't take that extra step, and I got drug into it. My firm got drug into it. I got deposed for 8.5 hours. It ended up settling. It cost me $40,000 and taught me some of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned in my life. My clients were able to sell their property. It didn't cost them an extra dime. 2 of them have passed on and gone into glory. And I was glad to be able to represent them in this process and help them and shield them from the worst of it. I did not come out so clean and smelling like roses. But at the end of the day, it was a $40,000 lesson that I would not be the business person I am today without having learned it. And so I'm thankful for it, even though it was one of the worst, darkest periods of my professional life. So again, you ask me, can I back out of a contract? If you do without cause, it can be a very expensive lesson that you learn. You have to have cause. And so that's why your real estate agent, your mortgage lender, all of those people, those professionals that surround you in the deal, that's why they're so important. Their job is to protect you and help you understand what you're doing. No one expects you to be a contract law expert. We expect you to be a willing and able buyer and nice and happy and fun and all the other things, right? We're the professionals. Let us be professionals and let us protect you in the process. And that's why I'm now in the mortgage business, is because I feel like I have a unique expertise and skill set that allows me to negotiate and navigate both the real estate side and the mortgage side well, and prevent you from falling into the traps and the various hazards that are out there that are just chomping at your heels trying to get you throughout this whole process. So again, can I back out of a house? There's your answer. Be sure to smash the like button. Be sure to subscribe. Texas Local Lenders. We'll see you soon.